welcome to Forward to the Past. In the episode today I'm going to be looking at vintage blow lamps. Now, in my last episode I reviewed this Primus stove, and I've got this out today because this works in the exact same way as the blowtorches do. The only difference is the fire acts differently. So we're going to take one of these apart, see what components it has, then we're going to fire it up and we're going to do a comparison between the old and the new. So a modern blowtorch uses compressed gas, so it's a simple case of just lighting it, but the vintage stuff is a bit more labour intensive. So this uses paraffin or kerosene if you're living in America, and paraffin will not burn like a gas unless you basically pressurize and preheat it. So what we have to do is use methylated spirits to heat up all the jets and the pipes that the paraffin travels through, so when it comes out it's in a gas form, not a liquid form. To get it to travel up to the top of the blowtorch we have to pressurize it, which is what the pump is for. So have a look at some of the components. This is very similar to the Primus stove. So we've got the filler cap where we can put the paraffin. It's always a good idea not to fill these up too high. You need to leave space for the air to compress. This is the pressure relief tap. So when you want to turn it off, you just loosen this and it will let the pressure out, and you'll hear a hissing noise. Over this side we have the pump itself, so the plunger inside. There we go. This is actually a relatively new one, which I put in a few years ago, because I don't actually... The gas blowtorch that I've got here, I'm borrowing off a friend because I don't own a modern one. I actually use these. So this one pumps really nicely because it's got a nice fresh plunger in there. And then on the top of the blowtorch part here where the flames are, we've got this cover. So I can just undo this. The cover just holds it and keeps it straight so it doesn't flop about, because when the metal gets hot it can be a bit precarious. So just undo this screw here. There we go. And this will come off. So this here, this is a kind of chimney mechanism, and this will channel the flame in such a way to make it burn like a gas blowtorch. Of course, these came out a long time before the gas ones did. So we've got these grooves here which causes the air to be sucked in, so you're basically funneling the flame outwards and you're causing the air to kind of burn it in a kind of furnace way to increase the temperature. And what we have here is the pipe. So this pipe here coming out from the bottom, this goes right to the bottom of the paraffin tank. The paraffin has to travel up here and it will go around this area here. Now this will get the full blast of the flame, so this will get red hot. So as a result the paraffin will get even more efficient as this gets hotter, turning it into the very volatile gas which is what we need for a blowtorch. The paraffin will then come down here and it will come out this very tiny jet here, which you can take out with a spanner if it gets blocked, and you can unblock it with a bit of a wire from a wire brush. And then once the paraffin is in its vapor form, it's forced out here at great speed. With the chimney it is channeled, so it comes out the end here in quite a ferocious blue flame. So I think it's time to fire one of them up. I've got two examples here of blowtorches. These came in all shapes and sizes. This is a particularly large one. This one is currently inoperative because the plunger is basically destroyed in there and I haven't got a replacement. This one is considerably larger than the other ones. But what I like about this one is it has two components on it which the other ones don't have. One is it's got a pressure gauge, so you can see if this is measuring in pounds per square inch, 45 is indicated by the red line as probably you don't want to go much higher than that, because I guess potentially you could possibly blow out the silver solder on where the brass joins. The other thing that this has is this tap here. So what you can do is you can actually switch this one off without depressurizing it. So you just cut the supply off of paraffin so it will stay pressurized, and you'll know that because of the dial. And if you do want to depressurize it, you can just open the cap slightly. So the idea of this one would have been that you'd keep it pressurized. You're using it on and off throughout the day in your workshop or the factory or whatever it is they were using this for. And because it would remain quite hot, you'd only need to put in a little bit of meth to get it going again. If you've only turned it off for a few moments, it should be hot enough that you could just turn this tap back on and then light it and off it goes again. So this is a much more industrial one, which I'm hoping to get running at some point. This is the one that I'm going to fire up today. It's marginally larger than the one that I just took apart, and this is the one that I actually use the most, which is probably why it's in a bit of a grubby condition. It's certainly a use and abuse one. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure there's paraffin in there, so I can do that just by shaking it, and you can hear it. Judging by the weight, it's about here, the line, which is perfect. There's lots of space in there for the air to compress. I'm going to leave this tap slightly open, because when you light it, if you close these, they do tend to seep paraffin even if you haven't pressurized it, and it can cause a lot of fire at the top, which is not particularly welcome. And then I can have it around this way so I can start to pump it when I need to. So this little depression here is essentially a reservoir for the methylated spirit. So I'm going to fill this up and then light it. So when this is lit, bit of spillage there, that's fine. When this is lit, the fire is going to really be focusing on this area where the paraffin comes up, so give it a chance to really get hot and vaporize. And then, like I said earlier, once it actually starts to function, it will really heat up those pipes really well and make it a very efficient gas. I'm just going to light that. Now we're going to wait for this basically to nearly run out of meths, and I can pump it and light it, or I can simply let it run out of meths and light it with a lighter or a match in front of here. It doesn't matter which method you use. Some people, the really old school way is you'd actually have a flint and you'd cause a spark in front of it, and that's enough to ignite it. So I'm just going to leave that for about a minute for it to warm up. I'm just going to turn out the lights so we can get a better view of what the flame looks like when it's going, because the blue flames in light can be quite difficult to see when it's coming out of here. I'm also going to move this gas one out of the way. We don't want to heat that up. So what I'm going to do now is the tap on the side, the pressure relief tap, I'm going to close off, make sure it's nice pinch tight. And if I pump this now, it should be able to light. You'll hear the paraffin start coming through, the vapour, and it'll start to combust like this. But at the moment there's a lot of air interference because the meths are still going. So I'm just going to depressurize it. I just did that to demonstrate that it can be lit using the meths when they're burning. But what I'm going to do is light this in a more traditional way. So I'm going to let the methylated spirits burn out. Then I'm going to close off the tap and pump it, and I'm going to light it with the lighter. Okay, so the meths are burning quite low now, they're about to go out. There we go. So I'm going to close the tap, I'm going to pump it, and the vapour will start to come out. There we go. So now I'm going to pump it quite a bit to get the pressure up and really get that flame nice and hot. I'm just going to depressurize it. You can see the tip of the blowtorch about here is just beginning to glow red hot. I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but I can feel the heat just from standing here. There we go. And the tip is glowing just a bit red. That last moment where basically it went yellow flame was because the paraffin was burning a lot more naturally, because it didn't have the pressure forcing it out and it was just dying. Without the pressure it burnt a lot more like a kind of conventional fire, so that's what that was. Anyway, we're going to do a little test now between the modern and the old. So we're going to start with the modern one. So how I'm going to test this is by using this rusty old spanner which I found. and I've just used the wire brush on it just to clean off the rust so we can get a better view of this turning hot. Stone cold at the moment. So this modern gas blowtorch is very convenient in comparison when it comes to lighting it. So this button here, if I hold it down, you'll hear the gas. And all I have to do is press it in a bit further and it makes a spark ignite it. So just to light this, all you have to do is press the button. Very, very quick and easy in comparison to the vintage ones. So it burns with a much more precise flame because it's burning butane or propane, so these torches burn a lot cleaner essentially. The paraffin is fairly full of impurities, so which is why the flame is quite aggressive like that. But it'd be interesting to find out how quickly it can make this spanner go to red hot. So I've got my phone over here with a timer, and I'm just going to hold it against here. The hottest part of the flame is just at the end, where the lightest bit of blue is. It's just at the end of that. About there. And what I'm going to do is, once it's red hot, stop the timer. I'm going to dunk this into the water here and make sure it starts from fresh and it's stone cold to give it a fair try. Right, so I'm going to start the clock and there we go. It's got that tip nice and red hot there. That took 39 seconds, 0.24. So I'm going to take this out, just dunk it in the water, let it cool down, and now we give it a try with the vintage one. Right, I've got the paraffin one going. The spanner is absolutely stone cold, so it's a fair test. Let's start the timer. There we go. 55. So there we have it, the vintage blowtorch. It might not be quite as efficient as its modern counterpart, as compressed gas burns a lot more efficiently and cleanly, but at the end of the day, this very old piece of equipment achieved the exact same outcome as the gas blowtorch. It just took marginally longer. I think they're wonderful pieces of equipment. Thanks for watching. I'm going to try and demonstrate what happens if you don't preheat the blowtorch correctly. So I'm going to put the methylated spirits in, but this is stone cold at the moment. So I'm going to start pumping nearly immediately just to see and show what can happen. I'll light those, get them going. I'm just going to leave it just for a couple of moments just so it can start and get this fire out of the way. I'll pump it now. Okay, there's a stream of paraffin coming out the front here. There we go. So it's like a homemade flamethrower essentially. But what has happened, if it's a bit hotter, the paraffin that's coming out in its liquid form is hot enough to combust. So without the need of me holding a lighter there, it will just cause a flamethrower effect like you just saw. And the only way to stop it is just to depressurize it, which is what I've done now. Right, I've fired this back up. The spanner is absolutely stone cold. Oh,